Perfect.
So I have to start with my usual levity.
I know.
I really like, I was watching one of our early videos today, and you look much better with the hair and beard.
Fuzzy. Thank you. So I was looking at this. I watched. Go ahead.
It softens you. Now, I also want to comment on your dress because I don't understand this kind of thing.
What's that?
No, you're not wearing a dress, like your dress, meaning how you're.
Attire.
Your attire.
What about it?
I don't know. I might run with the dress thing for a minute if I can get away with that.
I'll let you take all of the noose you need.
God, I love you. So I'm just curious, how many suits do you have?
No, I don't. I have like 4 or 5.
Yeah, and how many jackets?
That's about it. It's just 4 or 5.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Not
okay.
much. And it's just enough to shake it up and change it up a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
No big deal. Just
I've got about 5 or 6. That's about all, right? You know, same thing. The thing about them is that I actually don't wear them out. Just because of how I work, right? I mean, I basically wear it to go into the office and take it off, which means putting it on the back of a chair or a hanger. And sometimes I abuse them by neatly folding and, you know, making the proper suit jacket ball, right? But actually, so the color pattern, the pattern goes out of fashion, right? But before I wear the thing out. And the only thing that doesn't seem to do that's Brooks Brothers. Those are my favorite. Anyway.
Good.
Anyway, so that was my now I feel okay. I can talk about serious things now.
You good?
You got to start. Oh, you're already recording. Okay.
Yeah, man. I'm on way ahead of the game. So I was watching the one you made from yesterday, and I was thinking about the Markov chains, and it appears to me that the logic appears to be somehow an exhaustive description of Markov chains.
Yeah, I think that would be actually the best description of the, and this is what Wolfram's trying to say, the best description between what we think is mathematical logic, which is operationally fungible, and Markov chains, which are not. In other words, there's a sequence in a Markov chain of states in a Markov chain. And in mathematics, you have to describe that kind of thing as a constraint. So when he says it's a new mathematics, it really initially bothered me because I would say it's a new logic. It's not a new mathematics. But since he thinks he definitely thinks in this mathematical model. I suppose since I think in a logical algorithmic model and he thinks a mathematical model, it should be obvious that we would frame the concept somewhat differently. But I used to, when I first started programming, of course, things were all new. And so I just called it state machines. And so most software I would build made use of state machines. And so the more complex I made the software, the more state machines it had. And one of the reasons I like stringy languages instead of compiled languages is because they're extremely suitable to dynamic production of Markov chains. In other words, self-modifying code. And to some degree, so anyway, the universe, as we're talking right now, we're seeing the universe discover its Markov chains. That's what discover possible Markov chains, which produce increasingly complex sets of stable relations in infinite variety that ends up with advanced life, which is still fucking amazing, right? I mean,
now, another thing that was mentioned was this premise of the great fallacy, which I relate to public narrative of a deceptive nature, which is to say it's a propaganda or output of elite that organizes society, but with a limited duration due to the fallacious nature of it.
Okay, so this is back to your, let's just try to frame everything as social construction.
Social constructionism, yes.
Right, so you can socially construct truths, or you can socially construct falsehoods. Since it's cheaper and more to create deceptions than it is to create reciprocal truths. In other words, most of us avoid work at all costs. You're going to produce more deceptions than you are truths, and those deceptions are going to be more desirable, because people perceive them as discounts, which is a good thing, but they're actually only immediate discounts at external harm, right? So yeah, it may sound like a good thing, and it's a good thing for right now. Well, heroin is a good thing in the short term. If you haven't tried it, don't. But the people who've tried it and talk about it, they'll tell you why. Because heroin produces the same thing as sex, right? I mean, it's the same reward, except that it's really intense. Just like MDMA produces the same thing as love, except it's really intense.
So this is you mentioned 4 dimensions of this: political, financial, economic, and social aspects of all collapsing around this time. We're heading for the rocks. Is that accurate?
Well, we are, except that we need to understand there's if not blame, responsibility for that. In other words, we're at war, and we are foolishly incompetent of understanding this warfare for the reasons I've stated, is that we've let the female out of the gate without controlling it as thoroughly as we've let men out of the gate and controlled them. I mean, our ancestors, people talk about, well, you were oppressed in industry. No, you weren't. You weren't oppressed. You were a fucking barn animal that was completely uncontrollable, a lying, thieving, cheating, get away with anything you can, barbarian. And the civilization, it consists of the institutions necessary to prohibit you from all those things, leaving you only peaceful voluntary cooperation left, which you think is human nature only because you've been indoctrinated into all these institutions from every single angle around you, and you have no freaking choice. So you think that's normal. That's why Europeans are weird, right? We think we're normal, but we're like the oddest case in man, right? Northern Europeans are completely weird, wealthy, educated, industrialized, rich, white, I don't know what it is, weird, white, industrial, rich, and democracies. Anyway, so it's just, we're weird, right? We're odd, but we really are odd. And this is the worst problem with women is, of course, they're biased to think this artifice we've created is normal because it's what they want. Except we created it for them by prohibiting all the alternatives. And unfortunately, we created enough opportunities so that they could join them, the workforce and the political structure instead of the family and social structure. And in doing so, we didn't constrain their antisocial behavior like we constrained male antisocial behavior. And we happened to bring an enemy into our gates who out of tradition and deliberate planning conducted a warfare against Western civilization, specifically using the female method of antisocial behavior as a method of warfare against our institutions of cultural production, which means that very capital that we depend upon for this high trust, highly productive, advanced civilization. In other words, women are just as evil as men. Or, I mean, I would say men are bad and women are evil. Because evil is treasonous. Men are just bad. So anyway, so that's my I find that if I'm getting feedback from people, the more I repeat these strings, they begin to get it.
That's right. I think that's useful. There was one last thing that I wanted to ask about, which is this. You mentioned balance sheet for assets and loss costs associated with our social environment to incorporate the, I would say, non-material goods, so such as the norms, etc. But have you generated such proto balance sheets, like for quantification of something like the
Sure. I mean, yeah, I
norms.
mean, but just like if you look up GDP, we are measuring a lot of things. They're an insufficient number of things, and in many cases, they're the wrong things. And in other cases, we're not measuring what we should. I'm saying you have to extend this to all capital upon which your group depends, your polity depends. So, like one of the most offensive example I can think of is that is the most obvious, is that, you know, we had 115 average IQ, which is roughly a little higher than the average Ashkenazi IQ in Europe, all right? But we don't have that anymore. We lost a standard deviation just since 1820 or 30. And we've, and right now we're on the border of going below down to 97, 96, which means that we're a second world country and a second world civilization. So we've reversed gains of thousands of years in just a short time because of this folly. And so what's the price? How do you price 15 points of IQ? Well, you price it on the future, all the costs of all the future under if we had maintained 115 IQ versus all the costs of all the future of a 97, 96, 95, 93 IQ, in which case you're into third world territory now. So you can't produce enough of a smart fraction to create a voluntary organization of the rest at that point. Moreover, you can't, if we're in back to the conflict of civilizations, which we are, and everybody says otherwise is too stupid to have to use the world's oxygen. If you're back to the conflict of civilizations, it's just whoever's going to rule the world is who produces the largest smart fraction. Well, we had produced the largest smart fraction despite our population, right? And we've lost it. So we keep looking at the Ashkenazi and saying, well, they're whatever. I'm like, no, we were just at peerage, right? We've just lost our peerage. Well, the same thing's happening to Chinese right now, right? Their IQ is going to drop down below ours within 30, 40 years average. It doesn't mean that people are getting dumber. It means the number of the smart fraction as a ratio of the population is decreasing. And so you have a bigger bottom. But why? Because if you're a dumb fuck and you have children, excuse me, I'm going to say this in colloquial terms, it doesn't cost you anything to have low investment children. High investment parenting is really expensive. And so we made it cheaper for dumb fucks to have lots of kids. And we brought in more dumb fucks through immigration. And we disincentivized everybody that isn't a dumb fuck from having kids. And so, you know, you're going to get the natural result out of that you'd expect. And we see it in the demographics. You can see it in the quality of discourse over the past 100 years. You can absolutely positively see it even in the 1830s compared to the 1830s. Yeah. Look at writing in that time period.
Oh yeah.
And so you know, or just writing by people. So what happens, of course, is as you get dumber, like we talked about graceful failure, you're dependent upon general rules of arbitrary precision, in other words, narratives about the world that are dumber. And so that's what's happening when you see our discourse. There's a demand for a dumber world, which we call PC woke, which denies the laws of the universe. It's a religion. It's a secular pseudoscientific religion that expressly denies the differences in man, right? And especially scarcity. But it also denies the differences in sexes, groups, classes, and it lauds the defective. And it's like, well, do you want to? We should be able to take care of the people who are different. Oh, they're defective, but yeah, we should be able to take care of them. But you don't like lionize them as an example. But we created a victim cult, right? And so that's what they did. That's what the Abrahamic, that's what the female method does. It tells you about the victims, right? The women are always talking about the victims because that's their universe. That's how they see it, because empathy would drive you. Empathy versus systematizing would drive you to a bias in those decisions. So, you know, like I said, we're either going to disappear or we're going to put the law in place. The law in place doesn't deprive anybody of anything. It says you just can't take other people down with you.
That's right.
I mean, it used to be that, you know, in my lifetime, you went to San Francisco or New York if you were gay. And there are communities there which were extraordinarily devoted to those people. But we purged anything that would be a risk to intergenerational reproduction and intergenerational transfer of our culture. We purged it from the commons. And that's fine. It doesn't mean you kill people off. It just means you keep them out of the places that need to be sacred. In other words, have the least number of costs imposed upon the production of a high trust society by the intergenerational transfer of culture between, you know, and genes. So, you know, you have to make it so the family is paying the cost of family and childbearing and intergenerational transfer, which is costly, is the high status position. We've not done that. We've created hyperconsumption of the individual at the expense of family as the status, right? And so we have that's why people get angry about this, is they have all these people running around. They're not producing the next generation, which is equivalent to not paying your taxes. And then they're virtue signaling their superiority of hyperconsumption when it's the families that are paying all the costs. So I'm like, great, you don't have any kids. We tax you at 3 times your normal rate. Okay, that's about right. Maybe 4 times. All right. And it's that simple, which, you know, because that's who's paying the real cost. It's like, we do everything wrong. And when I say it's the Christian ethic, I'm right. Right. I mean, it's just, we have this thing of the battle between the clerisy and the judiciary and the military. And without the military and the judiciary to gate the clerisy, the trifunctional doesn't work. Well, we let women into the system of politics without guarding against their demand for a clerisy and exporting all costs and responsibility onto males so that they're not responsible for it. We just let it happen. Well, then we let in an elite that specializes in providing women with justification of their demand for clerisy.
Perfect.
We're just bots.
And
the problem is so few of us are sufficiently human. In other words, your definition, my definition of human, sufficiently conscious to know the difference between animal instinct and extant reality and cause and consequence. When almost every one of these monkeys is operating by instinct, they're just talking monkeys. Right. And they're not particularly smart talking monkeys. And they think that they're smart when it's just this incredible system that our ancestors built up around them through trial and error based on one oddity of their ancestral geography. Just completely by accident, we're the only monkeys that managed to type the works of Shakespeare on an infinite number of typewriters. You know, it just, call it luck. It doesn't matter. It worked, and we're the only ones that did it. Well, what's the problem? And so they say, well, we're all equal. No, the rest of the world failed. And we only succeeded because despite being invaded by the Abrahamic method, right, the Abrahamists, we were able to overcome it again. Because while people keep talking about religion as if that's what guides them, it doesn't. It guides their fantasies. What guides them is their law. because that's what's concrete. So that's why I say it's so important we go back. And nobody saw this. Nobody's reacted to this than when I said it yesterday, but it's one of the most important insights is the reason the Muslims came up with Islamic law is because the Byzantines conflated church religion and Roman law, just like they conflated philosophy and religion. And what they did together by trying to create that monopoly, of course, broke the Christian tradition in the Muslim and the Arab world or the Middle East, who would have been fine with the 3 books of wisdom, right? As long as they could keep their local laws. But local laws are local religion is wisdom, but local laws are life. So we have this thing, and I keep saying that's what Europe got right. We got law first. So we couldn't get it wrong like the Middle East, and we couldn't get it wrong like China. And we didn't fail like India. Right? I mean, it's just we got it right, and we got it right by accident. Fucking deal with it.
Always liked it when you incorporate the Indians into your thinking, because it's you trip on it because you like them. It's like
I know. Somebody asked me this yesterday. I try to remember what I said. There's three reasons. Is the people, once you put the caste system in place, you don't have to lie anymore. Right? You don't need to lie. And there's some truth to that in our way, the people who work, the people who fight, and the people who pray. Right, in Western tradition. Once you have those systems, you don't have to lie. It's when you create this equality, like the Middle Eastern religious equality under God, right? Or you create the European belief in equality in the Enlightenment. Once you bring in that lie, you're screwed. So you have to create other lies to cover up that lie. Well, the Indians never had to create a lie. They just put the caste system in place, right? They didn't provide a means of rotation like the Europeans did. In other words, we put in these courts basically, right? And so we had a court caste system which allowed migration, but they had which is basically your ability to manage property, right? And then you got a higher court, which meant you had more power, right? They just did it with a caste system without rotation, but they didn't have to lie. Our ancestors didn't have to lie either. The problem is that they didn't find a reason to be good to the slaves who were, in other words, the bar for being a good person was too high. The Indians didn't do that. The bar for a good person is basically doing your duty. And your duty, not like in military first in the West, but doing your duty as in your caste first. And if you did that, you're due respect. The problem in the Middle East, of course, is that it's a low trust society because there's only one way to get respect, and that's to race to the bottom. That's why I say you can't, everybody studies like their favorite thing. In other words, seek justification, but it's only the adversarial competition between all civilizations that teaches you how, oh shit, they did it this way. Why? Well, it turns out, like always, there's just 3 points on the triangle, and you've got to choose which way you're going to mix them up. So yeah, I like the Indians because they didn't have to lie. I mean, they failed, and they failed early for reasons that I'm not quite sure I understand, because they were clearly on a path to secular reason by the year 0. They were clearly there. There's incredibly good intellectual work in India, and it does continue. Why it breaks, I just don't understand. And so I'm not sure I could even get it through living there, because they're just like my business partner, Navin, who was born there. I think I've brought this up before. He's like, dude, I go back to India. I'm born there, right? I mean, his mother's Scottish and his father's Indian. He's a scientist. And those people could be from Mars, and they wouldn't be any more. They would, in other words, they'd be more different. Now, it's different today because India's changed a lot in 20 years. But I mean, they think about the world very, very differently, or they did. Internet's changed this world over, but it's just weird. People walk into, you see these people doing interviews in some rural part of Africa now, and somebody's got a smartphone, so they have access to the internet, right? And so they actually know about stuff, and they stop feeling guilty.
Who's top feeling guilty?
Yeah, people in Africa, I don't know how to describe it. Things aren't as alien. In other words, they don't feel guilty. Guilty is guilty the right word? Alienated.
Oh, okay. Right.
They don't, it's a lot harder to blame yourself for your civilization's failings when you see when the internet exposes how fucked up we all are.
Everybody's a mess. I'm sorry. That's why we have coffee. It's tough in the morning, man. It's tough.
I can't find this cup anymore.
Really?
I can't find it. Starbucks doesn't sell it, and I can't find a manufacturer who makes it. So I have two, and I have to protect them with.
I know.
I have to take very good care of them.
That's right. That's
I
right.
wish I bought 12.
I'm sorry.
Because it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's manly.
That's right.
Did I answer your question?
This one, we were talking about Byzantium, and you called the conflation of the religious and the political aspects of their civilization. Is that an accurate description of what you said? And I don't think of conflation, but I'm collapsing them into one. So that it's the same thing, I suppose.
It's monopoly. They create a monopoly, which was the wrong fucking answer. Which is why they collapsed so fast. And the only reason they stayed around is because they have the most optimum place on the planet to build a fortress, right? A urban fortress with the least ability to deprive it of trade. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's a geographic thing, not a cultural thing. Right. Well, Byzantium lasted a long time. Well, it shrank fast as hell and it was eventually defeated. But I mean, it's like saying, I have a castle on a mountain. It has a mountain, right? I have a castle up here that covers the whole thing. I have enough fields to grow up there, enough wheat to make enough grazing around, and I've got natural springs. And by the way, it's naturally heated by some volcanic action in the earth. And you're wondering why nobody takes us over. Well, it's not me; it's geography, right? Well, in the case of Constantinople, I mean, it's just the optimum location on Earth. I mean, today we built the Suez Canal, right, which made a huge. I mean, I can't remember what percentage of traffic goes through the Suez Canal. It's like what percentage of traffic goes through the Panama Canal, right? I mean, these things were huge engineering efforts, but they made a very big difference in world trade, right? Well, I mean, they didn't have to dig the Bosphorus straight, right? I mean, it was there. So you're just like, it's like, so why do they put a gas station at the corner of these two highways? Because the most people go through it. Well, I mean, what is Byzantium? It was a fishing village that they figured out, shit, this is like the best location for a port in the world, right? And it was, because now you've got the axes of all these continents. You've got Europe, you've got Central Asia, you've got the Silk Road from India, from China, and you've got the travel routes from India, you've got the Middle East and Africa. I mean, you've got freaking everything coming through there, and you're like in the ultimate position because everything can reach you by water, which is the cheapest way of transporting anything. Okay, you're going to be rich, right? It doesn't mean you're competent. I mean, it's like, what do you call it? It's well sitting, right?
Yes.
Right. So the Arabs aren't, the Saudis aren't competent. They're just sitting on, $100 million worth of years worth of dead trees. Right. Well, that whole area, because it used to be because this stuff forms around coasts, right? That whole area right up to, I mean, it's not a secret where the oil is from the Saudis, right? The Saudi Peninsula, all the way up to the north of Russia, right? It's virtually a straight line. Well, there's a reason. It's not complicated. So anyway, how did I get off on that? So they're just, so the problem with Byzantium is the way they solved it was trying to be cheap, and religion is cheap. Once you've got religion, now you can add law to it. Now you can rule, you can mix your rule, right? And you can hire, you've basically told all these people who are priests who are basically sucking the life out of peasants. I said I was trying to get. I did that.
Didn't work. That one failed.
That one failed. There's priests or scam artists who are managing all these peasants that they can impose the law to. So you've used one distribution, a wisdom distribution network, where that wisdom was existed for the simple purpose of letting a lot of tribal people cooperate with each other, right? And now you've brought in law that said, I'm going to fuck that up. Because I can make us all cooperate with each other, but I can't make us all operate the same. Right? That's a very different thing. Christianity said, create a market, right? By love, right? And create tolerance. But it didn't say, by the way, you got to change all these freaking property rights and internal mechanisms too. Well, of course, the Arabs said, we can't fucking do that. Because they're all down there in Saudi Arabia, right? The Jews, the Christians, and the Arabs, and with their stuff. And the Arabs were the ones who were behind. They decided to get ahead the way the Chinese and the Russians decided to get ahead. Because their ideas couldn't win, so they won by conquest and imposed their ideas. Because that's what people who are behind do. That's why China's a danger.
All right. Now I've exhausted my backlog of thoughts and questions.
All right. Well, I was going to go through and I had two choices. I was going to go through and repeat and see if I could repeat the first principles thing, but somebody sent me a link and I realized we've done such a good job of it, I don't have to go over it again. So I'm going to say that, you know, the idea of the method, the first principle, its application, and its infinite scalability across all models, that's sort of a thing we've got down, and I don't think that's needed. I think the next thing I'd like to do, if I can do it by talking about the female method of warfare versus the male method of warfare, instead of the European versus the Jewish method of warfare, maybe you'll be able to tolerate me going over it.
Probably will help.
It's going to be really hard work, though.
I know. I'm gonna drink some more coffee just to help you support. I want to be as supportive as I can be because I know it's difficult for you, Kurt.
So let's start out at the top, right? I'm damned if I do one way. If I don't name the causal group, I get hate from some. If I name them, I get hate from others. I can't win the basic argument. So the way I'm going to try to do it is the way you advised me, which is therapist, and explain both sides. We don't know what we're doing. We evolved our group strategies for largely geographic reasons, and largely in prehistory, and we've evolved along with those group evolutionary strategies, and contrary to previous belief about the rate of human adaptation, it turns out it's very, in other words, humans adapt very, very quickly, and so we change. So it appears that we and our cultures have both selected for behaviors. You know, all our cultures have selected behaviors that are suitable for our group evolutionary strategy, which is only rational because what's the difference between my group evolutionary strategy consisting of people and the environment consisting of things? Well, in the abstract sense, people are just other extension of other things. So of course, if you adapt yourself to the environment, you're going to adapt yourself to the people, right? I mean, so people adapt to their group strategy just like they adapt to the environment, which is a function and where their group strategy emerged from their environment, right? It's not very complicated. So we evolve really quickly. If you look at the way to do it in Europe is to look at the selection against non-white genes. In other words, against the selection for neoteny and against the absence of neoteny. So if you look at that in Europe, how fast that happened in a few thousand years, right? You see how rapidly we can adapt just by selection pressure. So groups adapt very, very quickly through different attribution of status that produces, that is where status is determined within some group strategy. And those traits that favor the reproduction of status tend to reproduce. And the more pressure there is, in other words, the more natural selection pressure on people, the more narrow that becomes, that expression over time. This is why isolation leads to adaptation and speciation. So I have to say that people adapt very quickly, but in large terms, we're just bots. Number one. Point one is we're bots that resulted from evolutionary pressures dependent upon our geographic circumstances.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I want you to clarify what that means to someone who may not have heard you use the term before, which is, my impression of it is that we're essentially wetware robots playing out programs.
Right. And we live in, like most people say, we live in a narrative that's basically our operating system. Right. And there's all variations on this narrative. But, the fundamental metaphysics of the narrative, the founding principles of that narrative, which is the group strategy, remain constant. So the degree to which we are conscious of what we're doing, rather than justifying our actions within our group strategy, is unconscious to us. That's really what metaphysics means. Metaphysics means the logic you're obeying without being aware of it.
Okay.
All right. So your metaphysical presumptions serve as the equivalent of your genetic dispositions.
All right, that one lost me.
All right, so you have you evolve genetics, and then you develop some biases in your behavior. On top of that comes culture. All right, culture's, you're born with some hardware, your body, some firmware, your whatever instincts result from your process of in utero development, and then the indoctrination and training you have, which produce your initial learning habits, which form the first layers of your neural network, and therefore frame the rest of things you learn. And so it means that we are and we have to understand that when we're talking about being conscious creatures, we need to have the incentive to act despite the kaleidic nature of the universe. So we create, our presumption of, in other words, I know where this coffee cup is, and I know where the stuff is in my house, and I might be aware of how my friends react, but my radius of competency is largely an illusion. Right? The radius, our perception of competency is because all our radiuses of competency overlap. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so this radius of competence. So we live in a world where we think we understand the world we live in, but what we're really doing is operating on a large number of accumulated rules of thumb that only work because everybody's using the same number of rules of thumb. In other words, everybody's operating by the same measurements. Or another way of saying it, everybody's operating by the same code.
All right.
Right. So the difference, the people, this gets to the free will question, which is the stupidest fucking question of philosophy, which is free will is I have the choice to make moral and immoral decisions within my cultural context, within my range of competency. So I'm responsible. In other words, other people hold me responsible for the exercise of my will within my domain of competence. We actually forgive people when they forgive people when they lack the competence and they don't know it. Right? But it's when people don't exercise will, in other words, they violate those rules we have established and cause harm to others, then we punish them. but we're pretty forgiving. The difference between crime and tort is just that, is that I sought to commit a crime, and a tort is just, well, how the fuck was I supposed to know that? Well, I got to pay for it because I paid the price of ignorance. Right. And then there's stuff that you just can't be held responsible for. I was born with this particular defect, and since we insure each other, right, the people guarantee to take care of you because of this defect. Right. I mean, this is just the spectrum of, it's not a crime anymore when it's completely outside of your control. Even if you were, there's no way for you to be knowledgeable of it or no way to predict it. So it's not your fault. Therefore, we insure you. We insure one another a tort, right? Which is, well, you didn't think of it. You didn't do it on purpose. It just sort of happened. And so, but you're still responsible for your outcomes. So that, and a crime is like, we're going to kick your ass because, not only did you not do due diligence defending yourself, but you cause harm by intent or by immoral intent. So we have this spectrum that we live under, which, if you just see what I did there, is the whole secret to P law, is if you've got a concept, if you can't serialize it to between its two endpoints, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So talking about it. So anyway, what were you asking before I went down the rabbit hole?
The realization of I like that of criminality or responsibility.
Right. It's the same thing in our law, though. People think when they go to court that they're being judged just on one thing. They're not. They're being judged for, are they guilty? Do you require punishment? In other words, well, you just need to pay compensation, right? Do you need to pay? Do you need to be punished? Right. In other words, what's the reason for these two things? Well, the first one is compensation is, well, I mean, I'll just be more cautious in the future about that. What's punishment? We don't think you're going to be cautious about that, so we're going to make sure you're fucking cautious about it. That's what punishment is. And prevention, which is, I don't want other people to see that you got away with only a 6-month sentence and say, well, I'm only going to get 6 months, even if I get convicted. I only have a 30% chance of conviction, so this turns out to be a good scam. So when you hear somebody getting an outrageous sentence, it's because they're doing three things. I'm getting compensation. I don't trust you because you showed no remorse, and I'm going to prevent other people like you from doing this by making it really costly. So that's what's happening in court. But it's like everything else. We don't tell people what's going on, and they're just fucking clueless. That's why you go into court. It's like the whole thing is, I screwed up. This is why I screwed up. It was bad judgment. I won't ever do it again. I'm sorry. I'll do whatever I have to make it up to the people. It's just really easy. But you go and you're a cocky asshole. You say you guys are oppressing me when you're a fucking criminal. They're saying, okay, well, I guess we move from restitution to punishment. Right. And because other people are doing it, I think we need to do from punishment to prevention. So that's with the scale, right? You're trying to take it from up the scale, and people don't understand. That's what the court's doing. It's not just looking at your little view of the world. That's when people don't understand the Supreme Court. Like, well, they're looking at the consequence over a century, given the past century, there's these 100 laws that depend on this that are really meaningful and whatever. And so they've got to look at the field. It's like when I say people, fields are important in mathematics, right? What can be calculated from here, right, is the field of opportunities. Well, the court's trying to cover that field. That's when you go in front of the court, that's what's happening. We think we're looking at this issue, right? But the court's not looking at the issue. The court's looking at the issue at how the issue affects the context.
All right.
So I forgot what question you asked there, though.
I didn't ask a very good question. We're just talking about bots and such.
Okay, so we got through point one is the way I'm speaking is under the acknowledgement of the degree to which we're bots, which is what I say is somewhere between humbling, humiliating, and dehumanizing, right? I mean, what someone said to me is this: I don't think until you understand P, you're not fully human. And in other words, you're not able to test your own agency. And I actually think that's true. I thought it was pretty interesting. Somebody who's been with us a long time. And so, so that's point one. Is that so I'm talking about the male and female methods of warfare. The next I got to talk about that were bots, right? And we're bots for historical reasons.
Right.
And then secondly, that the first principle of evolutionary computation is the broadest axes of difference creates this broadest scope of potential computations. The broadest scope of differences in humans is the sexes. And all our major differences are reducible to differences between the sexes. And then variation, there's variation on both sides, right, between the sexes, with the only constant appearing to be systematizing versus empathizing, which we call the female brain and the male brain. So what's happened is that males and females developed increasingly extreme adaptivity with increasingly extreme compromise.
Right.
And this creates a huge area under the pyramid for adaptation, this cooperation, adaptation, and production. And if we went too far, you get, you go too far the male direction, you get a Genghis Khan, right, who impregnates 4 women a day, right? Or you get the opposite, which is the female situation, which is what brought down Sparta. And so you get negative effects either direction. So the problem is maintaining the utility of calculating increasing surface area in other words, increasing the scope of surface area. In other words, how much energy capture can we just capture? In other words, and then what is the equilibrium that captures the most of it, which is the most adaptation. And so if you understand males and females have very different strategies. The empathic strategy, which tends to process a lot of near information quickly, and the male information, which narrows information over time. Why is this? The female cognitive strategy, reproductive strategy, is to manage 4 or 5 children. The male reproductive strategy is to herd a bunch of women with his brothers into a territory and defend it and expand it. And so the male mind is organized over time, and therefore the pack, or the tribe, and the female is in time, and therefore her offspring. And so this is a division of cognitive labor, perception, cognition, memory, advocacy, and labor in time. And we find compromises that provide the most adaptation. So it might be useful, and because we're able to adapt, it's useful that we can move around this triangle as necessary. We can move into a warfare situation under some conditions. We can move into a family priority, hyperconsumption. In other situations, we can move into commercial productivity. In other situations, we have this incredible range of adaptivity. That means we have an incredible range of ways of manipulating the universe. What does the alligator got to do? He just waits for something that he can eat near the shore, rolls around 3 times and sinks to the bottom until it's gone, and then eats it, right? I mean, but it's not maladaptive in the sense that it fails. It's maladaptive in the sense that it doesn't evolve. So it's frozen. But people in civilization, people, organizations, companies, governments, and civilizations do the same thing. They reach the point of maladaptation. So what we've done in the West, of course, is we've not run up against that limit for a reason I'll get to. But the point here I'm trying to say is, once you understand evolution is just doing that. It doesn't matter whether it's a electron or a proton, an electron, neutron. It doesn't make any difference. Quark, doesn't matter if it's a hydrogen atom, a carbon atom, or it doesn't matter if it's a protein molecule, right? Proteins can do work, right? It doesn't matter. All they're doing is using every single thing at every single level, from the quantum field that it lives in, to the molecule it represents, to the cell that it's within, to the organelle organelle that it's within, to the society of cells that are cooperating to produce a life form, right? It doesn't make any difference. What's happening at every level is this: how do I create a stable relation that holds energy, right? That's it. And why does it do that? Well, because there's a pressure on the universe. And while you have this idea of entropy, it's actually wrong. There's two ways to go. You can organize or you can disorganize. Well, it turns out that the universe likes organizing just as much as it likes disorganizing. And why? Because it relieves the pressure if you organize, right? So the pressure is what causes organization. This happens across there's no difference between us and an amoeba at that level, right? Or between the amoeba and a hydrogen atom. There's no difference. The same rule applies across the whole thing. All right, so my point here is that this general rule of male and female is the primary axis of computation of adaptation, because we have opposing interests in time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So what's really happening is we're computing how to capture more energy and time in a division of labor over time, with the female in the shorter and riskier in the short, in other words, children are fragile, and the male, the longer and riskier in the long term, which is warfare. And so this computation is going. This is the basic computation that goes on. So how do males and females conduct antisocial behavior, conflict, and warfare? Well, males do it by pretty obvious means. We hit things and break them. We use pointy things and stab them. And we get together in formations and do it in a ballet we call war. How do women do? So that's warfare. That's how we put it to good use. We also put it to suppression of violence, right?
Right.
We defend men against other men in order to maintain that ability to work in large numbers against other groups of men. We also can demonstrate that behavior as antisocial behavior. In other words, not pro-social behavior, which is regular behavior, which is hunting, behavioral regulation, and warfare, which are necessary. We also can do it antisocially by drinking, fighting, any disruption, violence, theft, crime. We can do it in negative behavior. So we know what male antisocial behavior is. It's great. And it's also because males are fucking dangerous. Right. So we spent a lot of effort controlling male behavior. So what's female antisocial behavior? Promiscuity, undermining, we call bitchiness, gossiping, rallying, shaming, moralizing, undermining, reputation destruction, two-facedness, double crossing. It's all these things, these big behaviors. And so that's female antisocial behavior. How does that put to pro-social use? It's pro-social use by limiting by creating a social construction of boundaries among not only women, not only men, but boundaries are among other women and boundaries are among children. Why is this useful? Well, the primary method of that female warfare is seduction. She's counting on her intrinsic value. And so she's using seduction. So the same means by which she seduces and manipulates children is the way she seduces and manipulates women, and the way she seduces and manipulates men. However, in this hierarchy, only women are equally aware of the seduction, manipulation, whatever that's really going on. And men, we just ignore this stupid women shit. See, I snuck one in there, didn't I?
It was. It's the. Gotcha. Didn't see it coming, Kurt.
And so, of their nature, women consider themselves privileged. They are the thing that resources should funnel to, right? And men are a resource provider, and very rarely a friend. So women naturally seem to group among women. And the primary value of a man, believe it or not, is preventing other men from bothering them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the. And then it's the fact that men and women, when you get together, because of that vast difference, the fact what a relationship does is makes you put the other person ahead of all other people. So a woman monopolizes the utility of a male.
Right.
And the man in exchange monopolizes the sex of a woman. And this is the trade. But it's not an, in other words, it's a trade, but it's not an equal trade of equal things. And so during the 70s, we created this idea that marriage is now just a friendship agreement.
Oh my.
It's not. And so the end result is you have a male pattern of behavior and a female pattern of behavior. But all of us are a mixture of male and female. Right? Some female and female. Some of us are hyper male, and some of us are hyper female. And there are men and women on both sides, but in general, the curve follows the normal distribution of most women are obviously female and most men are obviously male, and almost never, and despite the personality traits that are sexually biased, the cognitive trait doesn't seem to change.
All right.
Where it's the organization of the brain makes the weights in the brain change, the organization of the brain doesn't. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so now you have the male and female differences. Well, just as individuals can specialize in the male and female differences or find some compromise, right, in the middle ground, groups specialize in male and female means of cooperation, right, and of competition and warfare. And some groups specialize in highly male systems of social order, and some in highly female solutions in order, and some in what we call libertarian or a sort of equilibrium balance that's of order. I feel like you're distracted by something. Am I getting you lost?
No, I'm pondering it. I'm pondering the nature of the discourse with specialization. It is like preference of groups for particular strategies.
Correct. And so we have spent our lives studying, because history is written by men, because men make big changes, and men are largely responsible for all historical change, because we do almost all the innovation, because we occupy the margins at the top and the bottom. We dominate the margins. And we're also loyal, which means we can scale, and which is why women don't. So we're loyal, so we can scale. So groups demonstrate this same difference in behavior. What's happened, though, is that we've now and made the world different enough that women can equally participate in economy and polity. But we've studied all this history of male war and law and economics, whatever. But what have we studied about the female method of warfare? See, what happened in the Victorian era is we sort of sacralized women. I'm not quite sure why. But it tends to be a really good way of motivating men, right? It's sort of like an extension of the chivalric code, which is to direct the natural malincentives of males to the benefit of the commons through the service of women, right? So in the Victorian era, we had another shift like that, a direction of males to the, but throughout history, women are thought of as largely evil creatures. And throughout history, women are thought of evil creatures precisely because they are. They gossip, rally, shame, undermine, right? And they create a lot of havoc. So if you look at our legal codes throughout history, there's a whole lot of law that, it's where the rule of thumb turns out not to be true, but it's where all that comes from, is that the men are responsible for controlling their daughters and their wives. Why? Because they're socially destructive. Because how do they warfare? They warfare by undermining. Well, what's the king's peace? A prohibition on undermining. So we had a very egalitarian law between men and women. Like if you got out of hand, they'd dig a hole for you to stand in, right? And they give a woman the club and you a club, right? This is meant to equalize your fighting capacity, to reduce it to a duel, and go ahead and whack the shit out of each other, right? Get it over with, but get it out. But it was done in public. But what do women do? They gossip and shame and rally and moralize and psychologize and undermine and fib and fabricate and magically think behind people's backs because they're trying to socially construct a deceit by which to war. So we used to have those laws. So what happened was we created this wonderful Enlightenment fucking bullshit of equality, which was a lie, which was the lie that classes could be equal, and then the lie that the sexes could be equal. And without equally protecting against the women, we created freedom of speech, not freedom of truthful reciprocal speech. In other words, right? Whereas it used to be that if you were a woman and you were engaged in shrilling, which is the legal term for what women do to undermine, gossiping was a crime. That's why we prohibited it. And so shrilling was a crime, which we think of it as canceling. Right? These were crimes because they were violations of the peace. But who was responsible for that? The town men. Why? Because you can't make women do it. You can't make women police each other on it. It's their fucking nature. So men were responsible for it. So men police men and men police women because we're the only ones who can. Because the only way you pull.
I think you should have said because patriarchy.
Well, I mean, that's the difference between patriarchy and policing. Is patriarchy claims we're commanding something rather than prohibiting their evils. You knew what I was going to say. You baited me into that. You wanted me to clarify for the audience, and you baited me rather than just ask me straight up. God, you're so cunning. Anyway, so men have to police because you have to police strength with strength. But the truth is, you also have to police gossiping, shaming, rallying, moralizing, reputation destruction, canceling with strength. The only way to police people is strength. So men ended up policing. That's different from men being in charge. In other words, commanding. I don't know about you, but in my households, women tend to have an awful lot of power. And in essence, under this policing, women are forced to build family and society, not undermine. Under this policing, men are forced to build polity and economy, right? But we're policing both sexes. Women can't even imagine they're evil intrinsically, but they are.
Right. And they will never admit it,
They will
even if
never
they
admit it.
figured it out.
Women's nature is intrinsically evil because it's based on their one weapon, seduction and rejection. So seduction is baiting you into a hazard, right? With at the lowest cost. So the woman's basic utility is I can bait you with my intrinsic value and never fucking deliver because you're a stupid man and you'll keep giving me for nothing, right? In other words, she'll buy on options. What is gambling? What is all gambling? What is financialism? What is advertising? It's an extension of the female method of warfare by seduction without ever having to deliver by reciprocity.
Okay.
So how do women warfare? They warfare by baiting into a hazard and undermining. It's their two directions, right? And they're trying to always scam. They're trying to get something for nothing. And then they can't tolerate the blame that's generated by it. So they have to resort to magical thinking. Because in order to be a woman, you have to have high neuroticism or higher neuroticism, which means you have to worry more because you're intrinsically wired to extend your nervous system to all these rugrats who are harmful to themselves and others, for which other women will gossip, shame, rally, and undermine you if you don't control them. And then they won't take care of your kids when you're infirmed, or they won't share food with you, or they won't help you do work, or whatever, or they won't defend you against the males who decided that you would be a nice sex toy for the feast. And so for a woman, ostracization is very dangerous. For a man, we just sort of put up with it because we're loyal. Women aren't loyal. They're devoted, but they're not loyal. Devoted means they'll pay a cost in time, but not overtime. Men are loyal. The men won't pay too many costs in time, but will pay a cost overtime. That's why men build companies and women don't. It's why men build armies and women don't. It's why men build polities and women don't. It's because why men build movements and women don't. Women operate by seduction and resistance and undermining. So we see this in every aspect of life. It's nowhere. I noticed it in consulting most often because I always found out that when any dysfunctional company I got into is because some group of women had figured out how to manipulate the stupid men. And they undermine each other. I mean, so women henpeck, like they never give up, right? And they destroy the enemy completely. Like men, we just fight till we're in a position, but women destroy each other. And so you get these, this really, in women's antisocial behavior, you get all these effects. Well, what did we do? We brought in, we let women into the franchise without, under this Enlightenment fantasy of equality and the of the classes. Not only that, but the post-Enlightenment fallacy of the equality of the sexes. We're not equal at all, primarily because we war differently. We may be marginally indifferent in how we perform tasks. In other words, the ordinary workplace stuff that these psychologists who are all fucking idiots measure is marginal indifference. But you don't talk about where we differ, which is what matters, which is at the extremes, which is how women conduct antisocial behavior and warfare, and men how we both sexes conduct this, or how men tend to invent and women tend to invent complaints.
All right.
All right. And so women are always in a position of special pleading. And it's a kind of magical thinking. And do they have to have that? Evolution says yes.
I want to know what you mean by special pleading. That's quite interesting.
Well, because I'm a woman. It doesn't have to be equal because I'm a woman. Women can hit men, but men can't hit women. Women can divorce men and take their stuff, but women can't divorce men and take their stuff and take men's stuff. I mean, it's special pleading. And so women say they're privileged when it's useful, and men are evil when it's useful. But women are just as evil as men. Well, but just as bad as men. Men are bad and women are evil. I mean, evil is treason, right? Bad is just bad. Right? But men are bad and women are evil. And this is our natural means of competing, is that women aren't loyal, they're only devoted. They're incredibly selfish. They use special pleading, and they're hyper consumptive, and they're the most selfish things on the planet. But they have their intrinsic value is such that we put up with it. I mean, if you've got a woman between 16 and 32 who's reasonably attractive, right? I mean, it's like, at least for men, it's fucking doing heroin. I mean, it's the same goddamn thing. I know it was for me. Doesn't work on me anymore. I'm older now, but I mean, when your testosterone's going through you, it's like, this bright shiny object that you just have to have.
That's right. Right.
And whereas they don't feel like that, they're more interested in what women think than what men think. They're more interested in how they feel than what they think. And they're more interested in hyperconsumption than in long-term loyalty. So, like I say, the best thing a guy can do is not be married today and amass wealth and not inseminate a woman unless you produced a contract for the limited compensation. Because for all intents and purposes, you're fucked. Which is why we have to get rid of this law and put it back on the state. State, you want to insure single mothers? Okay, fine. But you can't deprive the guy of his ability to obtain female companionship, because that's what he's trading. He's trading his productivity for her sex and affection. And if anybody says otherwise, they're just doing what we all do, which is magical thinking in order to get around the reality. That's right. I would say that, like, I love my wife, Alora, and I will love her to the day I die. And I think she's God's gift to mankind for me.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it just is. Right. I couldn't be married to her anymore for a bunch of reasons. Couldn't stand it. But I mean, I just love her to death. And I think she's a fantastic person. But she's also one of the most masculine thinking men you'll ever find. She's one of the most rational women you'll ever find. And talented and beautiful and regal. And so she's fantastic, but it's not like, and those are rare. You know what I mean? Those are rare. I'll never be as good as I was with her. In other words, the teamwork was unbelievable. So it's not like miraculous relationships don't happen. It's not like two people can't bond, especially when they're young. Create a family when young, as long as they're near parents who can economically support them during the early stages. And so they can bear the cost of just childcare is so burdensome on young people when they have no money and they have a lot of debt. So if you're around parents or aunts and uncles, right, like that family that I know in Ukraine, they have like 360 of them. They own a whole town. It's just one family. If they want a house, they just get the 300 people together and they build a fucking house, right? It doesn't cost anything.
I like it.
We forget how useful that is. But so if you do that and you're young, you have a very good chance of staying together. But you take a woman and have her ride the cock carousel, and the same thing with guys. You've learned to become selfish. You haven't spent your developmental stages from your teens to your 20s, maybe 30. You haven't spent that time learning how to transition from youth to adult by self-sacrifice in order to produce. What you've learned is how to be selfish, and you don't want to give it up, which is what it's the worst. Like I said, if we can do it wrong, we do it wrong. Anyway, so I'm starting out this thing trying to make a couple of points, and I'm taking like a fucking hour to make my couple of points, right? Which is that, look, we're bots. We developed strategies based on largely on our geography. More than that, but we've covered geography else, but various factors: geography, relationship between the classes, number of local competitors, means of production, blah, blah, blah. But it's largely, those are all geographic dependencies. And then the primary axis of evolutionary computation is the difference between the sexes. And the sexes' primary means of value attribution. The sex's difference in reproductive strategy, its means of value creation, intrinsic versus productive, and its means of warfare, seduction versus force, seduction undermining versus force defense. These are basic mechanics of evolutionary computation. So when I say that, I just want to make sure that these are physical laws. You're not going to get out of it. That's just how it is. If this wasn't the case, you wouldn't evolve advanced human life. So this difference is necessary. It's the compromise between the two extremes. So what you see today, I'm going to make one last divergence, is you have us wealthy enough to want to pursue our male and female biases, right? We're distributed, right? There's the male bias and the female bias. And some of us are very male and some of us are very female. And some of us are in the middle and we're sort of average. And those people are what we think of as normies, right? And that's fine. So what's happened now is that our stage of our existence, there's this pull for us to develop polities that suit our cognitive biases. Right? The portfolio of biases we have, male or female. So this rift you see is a diagram I drew up in 1991 or something, which is just this pulling apart of a distribution into factions based on our differences in group strategy, which no longer need to be ameliorated under the homogeneity of agrarian civilizations. Right? So we don't need this thing. So we want to separate into a high-low serfdom and elites, and a majority middle, which is largely male, and a high-low, which is largely the cognitively female. Because that's the minimum responsibility, female, and the maximum responsibility, male. That's what we want. So, but civilizations took this same thing. I'll start with the gypsies because they're the fun one, because everybody's okay with picking on gypsies.
That's rough. Shoot.
I mean, their thing is they settled on petty crime. You know, like they specialize in petty crime. Now, what did the Mongols do? They took horses and moved very quickly with high crimes. What did the gypsies do? They took donkeys or wood carts, and they slowly went through places committing petty crimes. You have to get rid of the Mongols because they disrupt the structure. So you've got to pay that cost. Do you get rid of the gypsies? Nobody actually gets rid of them because they're just too much of they're just a fucking annoyance. And besides, they supply prostitutes. I mean, really, that's really it. And some labor, because they're actually like, they'll go do things like tarring roofs and, you know, they'll steal whatever they can get their hands on, but you know, that's their thing, right? And they're beggars or whatever, they're annoying, but they don't trip us from a minor moral variation into a necessity of suppression. Mm-hmm. Well, what do women do? Women do the same thing. They don't trip us from an annoyance that we have to tolerate. Now men can make women behave because we just say that's fucking enough. Right? Since we stopped doing that, that's when they've got it out of hand. So we talk to women as if they can control it. They don't. They don't have that agency. If they had that agency, they wouldn't be women. So you just say, you're out of control right now. And just like women have to say, you don't get to hit me, because that would mean you're out of control. We get to say to women, you're fucking out of control, right? As Sean Connery made the slap in the face comment.
I don't know what that is.
I think it's Sean Connery. I think it was Sean Connery. It's somebody of that stature said, yeah, you need to slap a woman in the face down then. They get out of control. Which I thought was pretty brave of him to say, because it was in the 60s or 70s he said that. Well, I mean, I've been with Russian women who are comfortable expressing their feminine emotions in physical terms. Not only verbal, but physical. And you'll see this in these videos of some guy taking slaps from some woman, right? Right, in Russia. And then he'll just give up and slap her back, and then it's okay, right? But it actually works. You know, they take it too far, right? There's guys who are abusive in Russia, especially because of the alcohol. But I mean, that whole physical expression thing over there, it's one of the reasons that women aren't crazy. It comes out, and they'll even say that, right? It comes out. But we stopped regulating our women to preventing them from engaging in GSSRM, cosmic shaming, really more, and undermining. We have stopped prohibiting women from avoiding the search for reciprocity. Because we've licensed their criminality. We've licensed female criminality. But this the same thing is. Why? Because we were under the illusion that it wouldn't scale. Like the gypsies didn't scale. Like women would naturally be this good thing. We deluded ourselves into thinking during the Victorian era. But they're not. They're just as criminal as men are. They just conduct their crimes by other means.
Yep.
And their crimes against the commons. Now, what we didn't expect is that some groups specialize in the female method of warfare. So there's Europeans, we'd specialize in the somewhere between the masculine and libertarian method of warfare. In other words, we specialize in war, and we do that because we have a libertarian basis in law. The Chinese specialize in state warfare, which is they're very, very good at. I mean, they're very, very good at it. And the Middle East specializes in undermining warfare, raiding warfare. And the Jews specialize, the Ashkenazis specialize in the female method of warfare. But they live just like women do on the commons provided by other host civilizations. So the Jews have developed not only the female method of warfare into a cultural group evolutionary strategy, but they've developed into a system of warfare that they use within any population they go to, which is why they get in trouble all the time. And they justify it by the same means women justify it, by demonizing white men as a proxy for natural laws of nature. And so eventually we tolerate them until we've had enough, just like the Russian guy tolerates his wife slapping him until he's had enough, right? And so eventually they get slapped and they, like women, say they're not to blame. But do you think they know what they're doing? No. Do Muslims know what's wrong with them? No. Do East Asians know what's wrong with them? I think that was a hard problem. I figured it out, but it's hard. Do we know what's wrong with us? No, I'm explaining what's wrong with us. We don't know what's wrong with us, right? We don't know what we do wrong because we're operating on metaphysics, means we're just taking for granted some software code that we don't really understand. And all I'm explaining is the laws that govern the software code so that we can choose to reprogram our software code.
So it's metaphysics explained.
Yep. So this is why what you've tried to get me out of my anger, which was very hard, by the way.
I know.
And the point is that you can't blame a woman for being a woman, since evolution needed to make her a woman. You can't blame the Middle East for being low trust people because evolution needed them to be a low trust people in that kind of environment. You can't blame Europeans for our stupid Aryanism, the thinking we can govern the whole world with because they're all like us, because that's where we grew up and everybody was like us, because we're basically all related. We're the most homogenous group outside of the Japanese in Europe, right? And so, you know, we just didn't encounter the metaphysics that needed to defend ourselves from people who are different. Whereas in the Middle East, you defend yourself from not even your family, right? In the Chinese, you defend anybody who's not Chinese. India makes the same problem. That's why they keep getting conquered. They're not willing to devote enough effort. They've created harmony as such an effective means, and they're real. It's like, why can't it's hard to conquer the United States? Well, it's a fucking huge self-supplying island. It's a fortress on an amazing island with enough resources that you can't possibly do anything to it without being sunk at the borders, right? It's like trying to climb the 10 guys can guard a castle because you can't get over the fucking thing, right? I mean, they'll kill you no matter what you do because there's just no way to get over a castle. It doesn't take many guys. Same thing with America. Well, oh shit, I went on a
Sideways a little bit.
sideways. I lost it. So
civilizational differences, metaphysics explained.
yeah, I was making the point that it's hard to conquer different things, and the reason it's hard to conquer India is because the population and territory is so large, and they actually operate by culture. So it's not like you can take over an institution and win. You can't take over nobility and win. There's no control in a system run by culture. It's an autonomous system, which is why I like it. It's so beautiful in a way. Just like, how do they do that? So it's a landmass. It's kind of isolated for a bunch of reasons, and they've got a large population over a large territory, much of it difficult to transverse. They're concentrated in a few really useful rivers, and like, how do you conquer them? Everybody tries, right? Well, you can like get some way to extract taxes, but you can't conquer them because you need like 3 times the population to really conquer them. You know, the British did it by doing the opposite, which is basically bribing the nobility to work against their own people, right? I mean, which is what the Mongols did. So anyway, these cultures work by different means. So, so you have to look at what these means were and why. But so anyway, the Jews were already predisposed to a certain behavior in the Middle East. They chose the female group strategy, which is what allowed a concentrated diasporic people, just like the gypsies, right? A concentrated diasporic people to profit by riding on the commons of others, and then engaging in those oppressions that bait into hazard, like, seduce people into hazard, which require externalizing all risk, and then asymmetrically profiting from it. So what did they specialize? Alcohol on credit, slaving, money changing. They said, well, we weren't allowed to own property. The reason you weren't allowed to own property is because you baited people into hazard with 300% interest, and we didn't want you seizing all their fucking property, because then it doesn't get worked, or the state, you privatize what the state needs as income. You were banned on property because you were getting it criminally. And the only reason you're getting it criminally is because the Europeans killed the Templars and took away our Jews. The French and the church, which I'm never going to forget. That's what Friday the 13th is for when the French monarchy and the Pope got together to kill the Templars so that they could skip a debt which deprived Europe of our equivalent of the Jews, which were the Templars, which today we call the Swiss.
That's some coffee for Jacques de Molay.
And we wonder why the Swiss do everything right. You just want to copy this. You copy the Swiss. There's 3 people that do things right in the world. The Swiss, they're getting a little paused now because they're surrounded by those fucking French and Germans. And the Japanese, who never do anything wrong as far as I can tell, and Taiwan, which is just one guy, Lee Kuan Yew. So I mean, you want to look at what's smart, you look at those 3 places. Everybody else is pretty sad by comparison.
It's good to have a metric.
All right, so what happened is we let the women into the franchise. We had a period of ideology, right? Female worship. We had the Industrial Revolution, and then we let women into the franchise. Just as we created the war, it destroyed the civilization and our norms and our confidence in norms and traditions, which we never should have lost. We never could have gone into World War I, and we should have never given up our traditions. Then we had the Hitler overdo the whole eugenics thing, and the Jews reacted against that because they were the ones who were going to be eugenicized, right? And they came to the Europe with the U.S. with the Frankfurt School as an effort to war against our continued use of Darwin. And so if what you see from Marx, Freud, Bose, etc., is an attempt to feminize science into monopoly again in the female model. And you saw Europeans get to eugenics, which was a continuation of the male model. Then you saw the war where the Jews had created Marxism and then created the Jewish thing we call the Soviet Union. And we saw what happened there because the female method doesn't work. It can't.
It's an error of scale.
Right? Femininity doesn't scale beyond the people you can touch with your finger.
What's interesting about that, the Soviet system, it's like the feminist system is capable of generating a state beyond which its intuition fails to organize an economy for.
Correct. Because they have to be in control. Look at how mothers treat their children and how difficult it is for mothers to let their children go.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they're trying to maintain control. This is their instinct. And they're trying to maintain control by empathic means. They're not trying to maintain it by incentives, rational, reciprocal incentives. They're trying to maintain it by seduction, gossiping, shaming, and rallying. What does your mother do? She makes you feel guilty. So what do women do when they scale? The same fucking thing. So you can't ask a bot not to be a bot. You know, it's what it is, right? What you can do, you can't ask a man not to be a man. What you can do is direct his natural malincentives to the construction of commons. What we have to do is what I've put in here is, and that's why people want me to be anti-Semitic. I'm not. I want to stop this fucking behavior. You know, so I want to stop people from practicing this method of warfare. And all my law does is say we're criminalizing the antisocial and warfare method by which the female method undermines the institutions of culture and production, which are the assets of intergenerational transfer of this civilization we call the West, which is the only one to survive the agrarian age, in other words, make it out of the agrarian age into the industrial, and the only one to drag man kicking and screaming out of ignorance and poverty. So I'm trying to solve this problem, and I don't see it as anything. I see myself as just continuing the libertarian, the classical liberal libertarian project. I see myself as continuing the British discovery, the English discovery of the modern state, which is a rule of law, right? And a set of markets for the production of commons and markets for the production of consumptions. I just see that as a thing, and I just understand that in order to maintain maximum computation, meaning maximum adaptation, you need to maintain trifunctionalism, which means you produce markets and everything. Well, what did the Byzantines do? They created a monopoly. What did that do? That caused the Arabs to create an alternate monopoly. What are the Chinese doing? They're trying to create a monopoly. Right? We're not. We're saying all you got to do is be libertarian. In other words, as long as you're competing economically and it's not immorally, we're all benefiting. That's the British method, which is the modern state method. But it turns out that this is genetically dependent. In other words, your demographic distribution determines your place in the hierarchy of states and therefore your wealth. So some states are going to fight this because they don't want to be that far down the chain. My argument is, well, just like capitalism, or basically rule of law, defeated communism, which is rule of man, just like we defeated that. In other words, masculine capitalism, meaning masculine rule of law, defeated feminine communism, or rule by the feminine method of equalitarianism. What happened is we created there's a difference between the people who are moving ahead, but everybody's moving ahead. What's going to happen, what happened in the world is what we've seen happen in the world is the whole world is moving ahead under the institutions we've produced. But what's happened now is that we've lost our ability to govern the world, right? As we had created the modern state, we've lost our ability to do this, to continue to drag mankind with us, because other people are envious of the status and power by which they can create greater self-determination, because in the end, we're all after self-determination. So the folly of equality is the belief that people and peoples will not pursue self-determination regardless of cost. In other words, at the expense of others.
Right.
So anyway, that's my context, right? And so I use this method of falsification by King of the Hill games, a prosecution using King of the Hill games.
Right.
This gives people the idea that I'm advocating for something rather than I'm falsifying something.
Okay.
So I'm going to end up saying, well, we just need to fix the Catholic Church. So how do I get there? I destroy every fallacy that exists in religion. And I build religion from first principles upward. And I say, fuck, turns out the church didn't do too bad a job. Right? They just failed to reform in the 1800s. And they failed to reform in the 1800s because of these factors. And so it's not really their fault. Right? Okay, so that's a very scientific way of explaining what it is. Is it a guilt way? Is it a blame way? No, it's just no. So
Descriptive. It's merely descriptive.
right. So do you think I don't like women? I definitely love women. I love women too much, actually. That's why I have 3 ex-wives.
I understand you, brother.
I can't have enough of them. Women are magic things. They're wonderful. The difference is I'm willing to say to a woman, which I have, the purpose of my existence is not a life support system for a vagina. My purpose of my life is to fulfill my life. You either help me reach fulfillment of my life, and I help you reach fulfillment of your life within that reciprocity, or you don't. Right? It's really easy to say that. The women aren't stupid. They just need it put to them in terms, right? Just like so. Do you think my business partner is Jewish? You think I'm anti-Semitic? No, I'm anti-Abrahamic. So it doesn't really matter to me.
I know. I don't regard this. I regard this as a slur designed to deviate attention away from you.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
All.
And it's the same thing. It's like, are you an atheist? No. I just want to get the lies out of religion. So the method.
Wait. Well, no, I have to stop you here because this is vital, because it's like we go back to this conversation with the that you had about 7 months ago with the fellow. We talked about this, brother.
Are you going to require me to get a new cup of coffee?
Yes, it's time.
I think we need a new cup of coffee before we go down this rabbit hole.
I will go down to it. That's good. I'm gonna write it down. I have to write down my notes. You can make your coffee.
It'll take me a minute.
Yes, sir.
I bought a new insert for my Keurig machine.
Ah.
And they've gone from $80 to $18.
That's progress.
That's China.
Yeah.
That's Germany versus China.
I think we're waiting for the supply chain to break.
Well, I just don't like this whole thing. My attitude is the European tradition is solve problems early and cheaply, and we're not doing that.
That's because we got somebody else in charge.
China is less domesticable than Russia.
What is China?
China is less domesticable than Russia.
Okay.
Because we aren't willing to bear a burden. Russians are willing to bear a much
They
lighter
are.
burden,
Those guys are tough.
and China will bear any burden.
Those guys are tough.
So they're going to win.
Okay.
Why does this thing making coffee have to make me go to the bathroom?
Just take care of business. I'm preparing for the next round.
Okay, so wait a minute. I just want to preface because I don't want you to run off on a sentence I said, which is more general than, I mean, I think you might have started. So when I say I want to take the lies out of religion, that's different from taking the fictionalisms out.
All right, I just wanted to comment on this because it's like the terminology is all I'm objecting to a little bit here. And the issue is this, is that the issue that you appear to have with the people that are making such assertions that you're having a problem with is unnecessarily inflated terms in your opinion, which is they're using tools that are not
Outside.
tolerance for their tolerances are much higher than yours for precision. And so they aren't being precise.
No, that's not even it. You know what? I love people who say, well, you do it all the time. You quote this biblical thing because you use it as wisdom literature, but you don't say if, then, therefore. So when there's a difference between religion and scripture and theology.
Okay.
Right. And so I love religion, and I think it's, I mean, I read Buddha when,
Right.
I don't know, I was in 12th grade or something, which really moved me. And then I read Siddhartha.
Yeah.
Right. The books, which is, I found spiritually fulfilling. Not that you got to understand how hard that is because how little spiritualness I have but I found it fulfilling. In other words, I understood him, right? And I found that beautiful and heroic. So when I say that, I mean, you don't use wisdom as if it's logic. You don't use philosophy as if it's science, right? And so when people argue with me that it's true metaphysically, it's not true rationally or scientifically. So it's wisdom. The thing with the difference is how many deductions can you make from a wisdom literature, right? From a philosophical statement, from a scientific statement, and from a mathematical statement. You can make a lot of deductions from a mathematical description because that's its fucking purpose, right? You can make maybe inferences from philosophical choices, right? You can make certain, math with science. You can make quite a few second order, third order, fourth order deductions from a scientific rule, right? I mean, we do lots of them. From philosophy, you can sort of build a model that you can make decisions from, right? But wisdom literature isn't structured to depend on your reason. It's structured to depend on your intuition. So you can't make these second and third order derivations from it. God said this, therefore this, whatever. You would say, God gave the advice or the command of blah, 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 blah. And my faith is that under that wisdom, I would follow this advice, right? So the problem I get with is when they try to argue against science, evidence, and testimony. And so it's not, because what they're doing is they're not being Christian. They're actually using force and violence and deceit. And so if you have to make coercion, you're violating the entire fucking concept of Christianity, which is it's through love and seduction, not persuasion and coercion. And so my problem is, why are you trying to use persuasion and force on me? You're not trying to show me love.
Where's the love, man?
It's just love. There's nothing else fucking to it. Excuse me, I got to block an idiot here. you have to give up on people.
It happens.
All right, back here. Where are you? All right. So when I say lying, that's what I mean. I mean, you can't, if you're using Christianity as coercion rather than seduction, you're not a Christian. So don't argue with me about theology, because you're now you're taking a tool beyond its domain. So if, I will quote stuff in the Bible. I mean, it's like, dude, that's, you're being the snake. Your snakes, so there's, Noah built an ark for a reason. I mean, we all can use that, so that's like the wisdom level, and then there's the love level, which is the whole point of his teaching, is that the only way to deal with the world, which is he's proxying it to the Romans, like women proxy to men, like Jews proxy to white people. He's proxying the laws of the universe, right, outward. And he's saying the only way we survive the laws of the universe is love, by taking care of each other. It's actually the right fucking answer. There's no other answer. There is no other answer, because you can't materially come up with resources. But love is fucking cheap. It's like kindness is free. People ask me, like, why are you so nice to people all the time? And I'm the kind of guy, I help a lady out to her car, lady out with her car, or I move the cart up or whatever. I'm always doing something. It's just because it's cheap. Give 200 hryvnias to a little old babushka selling vegetables, right? When it's like 5 hryvnias worth of vegetables, and I tell her to keep the change. Well, I mean, it's $10. But for her, it's like she probably makes 60 or 80 bucks a month. All right, so it's a big deal for her. What did it cost me? Nothing. Made me feel fucking good. It made me feel Christian. Did I ask for anything? Did I try to persuade her? No. You just do. If you can't just do, you're not Christian. You're just trying to be selfish. You're trying to display dominance. You're trying to defend your misuse of Christianity. And so I just view them as liars and frauds. And so that's my argument, is that don't use Abrahamic method of deceit. In other words, don't use the means by which women undermine as a weapon by which to advance your religious dogmas. Either you can show me love and care and demonstrate you're Christian, or you're not, because you are what you do, not what you believe, despite the fact that all these hokey religions try to tell you you are what you believe, not what you do. That's my... All right, so now go ahead and correct me.
No, I'm good. I'm good with that.
Wait a minute, I thought you were going to beat me up for half an hour.
I wasn't. No.
I was ready to get my shoulder pads on and my helmet.
You got your coffee, right?
I got my coffee.
I'm getting my coffee. All right. See, I'm back.
So
I appreciated that distinction between how to distinguish between lying versus merely imprecise use of tools.
Well, so this is one of the things in P law, right? As in our court system, it's based on tort. So you don't have to intend to be a criminal to be responsible, to be punished for it. So you don't have to have malincentives. You just have to be irresponsible. So this misuse of the means by which the fundamentalists have learned to defend their fundamentalism is the use of the female method of undermining. In other words, they're using deceit. And so when I say deceit, I'm like, either you're Christian or you're not. If you have to engage in undermining of science, then you're not Christian. You either have faith or you don't. You're either acting Christian or you're not. And if you have to do it with this creating the social construction of other than love, you're not Christian.
Okay.
So anyway, so I want to switch over to this thing, but you have to understand it's written with Jewish, not women. So do I leave it off the screen? I think I'll just talk it through. How about that? I won't show it. Well, because I'm trying to say I'm trying to show who brought this strategy here, the way the Jews brought Christianity into Europe. I'm trying to explain and how the Muslims are bringing Islam into Europe and elsewhere, that these things are extremely destructive. And I'm trying to show who did it. They say our civilization is falling apart. It's not falling apart. It's being destroyed by war. It's not happening.
I appreciate that. It's not a spontaneous event. It is occurring within the context of what appears to be intentional disruption.
Right. They said what they were going to do. They wrote it down. You start with Gramsci and work its way through. The Frankfurt School, they came here on purpose. They came here and said what they were going to do on purpose. They did exactly what George Soros says he was going to do, which is destroy the United States of America. Because if you destroy the United States, they've got Europe. Because they've already destroyed Europe with the world wars. So they came in here, they already started Russia with the Soviet Revolution. This method of warfare is incredibly effective. This is why we have to adjust our understanding of warfare to anything that's a war against the capital, any kind of capital that we use. So they came here, they brought the Frankfurt School here. They created the, Marxist the postmodern was a French Jewish invention, right? So we had a German Jewish invention with the Frankfurt School, and we had a French Jewish invention with postmodernism. They brought these things here to destroy us the way they had destroyed the other countries in Europe. They did it on purpose. And what did they say? They said Marxism can't work, because they knew this by that point. Marxism can't work because capitalism can defeat it for the working class. Capitalism, in other words, rule of law rather than masculine rule of law, rather than feminine human control, will produce better outcomes. So they couldn't win it. Who can capitalism not solve? The African Americans. They knew it. Now, we can't say this because it's a dirty word, but the evidence is throughout the entire economy. They can't do it, right? And they can't do it because the population demographic is too large on the bottom side, and all races practice racial preference. So they can't fix this problem. And they're right. Capitalism can't fix the problem. And so what they did is they migrated from class warfare to race, and then identity warfare. And they've just kept expanding it. So you get Friedman-Steinem Jewish feminism, not British European Christian feminism. In other words, not the search for equal legal and property rights, but the attempts to destroy men and the family. You didn't get the positivist view in law. You got, in other words, the Bentham view in law, which sought to, you got Dworkin, Rez, the Jewish legal theorists who brought Jewish legal authoritarianism into our system. You didn't get Darwin and Spencer. You got Marx and Freud and Bose, who brought the feminine Semitic method of female biases in. All these things are wars against truth. Postmodernism is a war against truth. The Jewish thought leaders in legal law are wars against rule of law, scientific rule of law. The Jewish social scientists are conduct warfare against our natural tendency to mirror the laws of nature, which is Darwinianism, which produced this hierarchy competing. Their attempt to produce a communism and a democratic authoritarianism, a take over the government, is not an attempt to provide a market for competing interests. It's an intention to remove the market for competing interests. In other words, all these Jewish groups have sought to destroy Western civilization from within. When they got into the universities, they did the exact same thing. They've sought to destroy the universities from it. PC woke is just the most recent evolution of Marxism, neo-Marxism, postmodernism, feminism, PC. Now it's into woke, and woke is openly gone to anti-Western, anti-white male as their primary method of warfare. That's what they've done. And what did the Christians do? They tore down the statues and they purged the schools. What are the Jewish woke leftists doing? They're tearing down our statues. They're trying to destroy our arts and our letters, and they've destroyed our mythology business, which is literature and movies. They've destroyed our arts by funding those things which are promote what they think of it as postmodern art, but it's heroizing the victim rather than saying the hero is paying a cost in order to pay for the commons on the behalf of others. The victim is saying that we need to serve these people's selfishness. All these things are weapons of destruction against institutional culture production. And they said how they were going to do it. The Gramsci said how they're going to do it. The Frankfurt School said how they were going to do it. The postmodernists said how they're going to do it. They're going to destroy reason itself. They took over the education system. They warred against the institutions of our legal system. They warred against our government. They've warred against our Christian religion. They've warred against our history. They've been destroying our history. They've warred against making people competent to participate as adults in the society by intentionally infantilizing them in our school system. So they destroyed everything that makes the whole possibility of the West possible. They did it on purpose. It's not an accident. So you say, well, it is an accident for people who are cognitively biased to this, and it's an accident for enough of our women to go along with it because it's natural fulfillment of the female competitive strategy to virtuize herself, in other words, to seek privilege for herself and special pleading for women, instead of actually paying equal cost of administration of the polity. So, I mean, this is just what's going on at scale. It's not complicated. The question is, what's the technique they do? Because unless you know the technique, which is gossiping, shaming, moralizing, undermining, etc., seduction on one hand and undermining on the other, seduction by false promise on one end and undermining and reputation destruction on the other. They've just institutionalized this into seducing people into the great hazard of the leftism and female authoritarian monopoly rule by man, in other words, left, versus male anti-authoritarian rule of law on the right. They've done this war against our, just as surely as if you went through to the Middle East and burned every Torah and Quran and every mention of scripture, they've done the same thing to us. But they did it slowly and through disinformation, by seduction of false promise, not by force. They did the same thing as they did to the Christians did to the ancient world. They killed or displaced the philosophers. They closed the schools. They destroyed their arts and temples, and they made it impossible for the aristocracy to recreate tragedy in the mutual production, mutual sacrifice, and in order to produce the commons that allowed us to continuously evolve. And they destroyed the ability of the aristocracy to produce it. What did we get? We got a dark age. And the only reason we came out of the Dark Age is because the Northern Europe was least under Christianity for the shortest amount of time, and they rebuilt trade up there, and they got to enough mass market where the Muslims who left the Middle East brought with them enough remaining European documents. The Italians could copy them, they eventually print them, and this could get out through Europe, and it could restore the method as our repeated, just at the same time, we had already gone through 4 or 5 attempts to reform the corrupt church, and every movement, including the monastic movement, failed. So we're trying to reform this corrupt church. Well, what happened was the church was never successful enough to be able to become what Byzantium was in the Middle East, which was a monopoly. So it could never drag the whole civilization down like Byzantium was dragged down into its fall to the Muslims. So the Italians did this. The English turned it into the modern state. The Germans the Germans created the Hansa, which would have been the Restoration. It was the equivalent of Greece in the North Sea, and right, the Greeks were in the around in the Peloponnese, whatever, and the space between Greece and
Aegean Sea.
Oh, sorry.
The Aegean Sea.
The Aegean. And so the Germans created that. But what happened was that just about as that's beginning to kick off, the freaking Muslims finally conquer Constantinople, cut off trade, and we have to invent the age of sail, which because we've developed this trade route, and we now have the technical capacity to do, and we just sail around the fuckers and destroy the economy of the Middle East. Because they can no longer rent seek. And they've built this religion that can only survive under rent seeking because it can't innovate, it can't adapt, it can't even form a corporation, it can't form a government. In other words, they have to hire mercenaries, they have to breed janissaries, they have to make janissaries in order to have people they can trust. They have to have eunuchs in order to have people they can trust. You can't fucking trust these people across, to not steal everything that's nailed down. That's why the Middle East is what it is, but they got a religion that mandated that. And what happened? It started as soon as by 900. So they went from 650 to 900, not very long before they committed suicide again. So anyway, so what I made off to anyway. So how was I trying to get to that? Forgot where I was going. Sorry.
It's okay. Wars against the truth.
Okay, so back to them. So they committed wars. They're repeating the wars they've made against other civilizations in this one. The thing is, the Jewish undermining and Christianity, we domesticated, so it's not harmful anymore. There's a great book called The Germanization of Christianity. So we transformed it. So it's not, but it was still a pretty good idea because it solved a real problem. But it would have been a good idea as another Roman cult. It was a really bad idea as a Byzantine monopoly. And so you take this thing forward, and we get the fact that they're repeating the same strategy. Well, look at how Islam destroyed how many destroyed Egyptian civilization, North African civilization, Persian civilization, Northwest Indian civilization, and Turkic civilization. It even it looks like it's irrevocably destroyed Balkan civilization. Irrevocably, irrecoverably. You can't recover it. So we can't get them, we'd have to get them out of there. In other words, what Russia wanted to do. Russia wanted to say, if it's Orthodox, we own it, and we're going to take it back. When we stop them foolishly, we do the wrong thing every fucking time. So in any event, so what's happening is this repetition, but what is the technique they use? So you can say, well, how do they do it? Well, once you put it into words, it's really easy. And I usually call it seduction or baiting into hazard by false promise, or false promise baiting into hazard. And so if I'm enticing you into a game of dice where I'm guaranteed to win, I'm promising you an irreciprocal return that I can't warranty.
Right.
What's a woman doing by keeping all those men in her sphere, in her orbit? Same fucking thing. And then when men do it, like wealthy men, keep a bunch of, the women can't stand it, but when women do it, they're fine with it because that's what they do. So let's go through this particular strategy women use. It consists of a number of factors, but I'm going to start out with the simple part. I can get down to it here. I wanted to get to storytelling. Here it is. All right. So there are 4 dimensions of false promise, right? Defeating the logic, the formal laws. In other words, They're trying to use seduction or disapproval to make you avoid using logic. In other words, feels over reals. This is one of their weapons. They evade reason at all costs, because reason requires reciprocity, and they're always trying to rent seek, not get reciprocity. So what you see is magical thinking, utopian thinking, whatever. The second thing is freedom from physical laws, scarcity. They externalize the laws of the universe onto men, because what they're doing is generating demand. When they know that's what they're doing, that's one thing. When they think men are creating the laws of nature, then they become a problem. Well, that's what they're doing. They create a false promise of freedom from natural laws. In other words, the rational incentives of all parties, rational choice, harmonious. So they engage again in magical thinking, and the false promise of evolutionary laws, which is the male's problem, right? The males trying to preserve the tribe, which, and what you're seeing in Europeans is we're trying to preserve our civilization because it's our group reproductive strategy. It's our competitive advantage. Women's competitive advantage is just how attractive are they, who can they fuck into giving them something. They industrialize the sale and distribution of these false promise by a set of 5 tactics. Faith healing, playing into hazard. So this is when your mother tells you it's going to be fine. Whenever Brett Weinstein or Sam, what's his name? Sam Harris, or any of them, what they're doing is using faith healing. It's delaying into hazard. It's preventing you from stopping a harm.
Okay.
They use false storytelling. This is the one you'll know. This is the one I noticed. I can't listen to any of these guys anymore, because the minute they go into narrative, what they're trying to do is bait you into empathy, loading, framing, obscuring, suggestion, and suspension of disbelief. In other words, by telling a story, they're baiting you into suspension of disbelief where you don't audit. Right? And the way they do that is they pretend they're making a moral argument, just like a woman pretends she's making a romantic argument. They make the false promise. This comes with the false promises I said above, and they advance the false promise by not speaking testimonially. So not only do they tell stories, but they include sophistry to idealism, magic to pseudoscience, occult to theology, or evasion to denial.
Okay.
Then they use critique, which is false criticism, which is they undermine you, any opposition you have. And they do it by undermining you and your motives, not the argument.
Ad hominem.
They never produce a equally competitive argument. They never propose a solution that's equally viable, because that would open it to reason and criticism.
Right.
Instead, they focus all of these things on preventing you from getting at the truth. Then they use duplicitous, double standard, irreciprocal, polylogical ethics, which I usually express as special pleading. They take the position that despite every lie they've just gone through and every factor of lying they've just demonstrated, that they're virtuous. Now, why are we vulnerable to this? This is the question. These are obvious techniques by which lies are constructed, right? So why are we vulnerable to them? Because it's just how women talk to us. We must have evolved a vulnerability to it.
No, it must be.
But we have to.
Otherwise, you get no family.
Right. I mean, if you were honest about what women were doing, men would not be able to keep up the magical thinking of men that there's hope. Right? And women would not be able to seduce you and then convince themselves they're not seducing you through magical thinking in order to get over the guilt that would normally occur if they knew what they were doing. So we're extremely vulnerable to the female method of warfare.
Okay.
And then they escalate. So they escalate from the least burdensome to the most burdensome tactic. They start out with faith healing. In other words, trying to blow it off or soothe you out of it.
Right.
You ever been in a fight with a woman, they try to get next to you, touch you?
Okay.
They'll do it, especially really feminine women. If I could just touch him or get close to him. This is the more purely feminine a woman, it's really beautiful. I mean, if you can get one of those lusciously wonderful feminine,
Right.
they're just yum. They're one. I mean, you don't care that you're being manipulated because of the luxury of it. I say it to Amanda. I know what you're doing, but I don't care. I just love it. I'll do anything. I don't care. It's a joy. And they want to touch you. Why? Because it releases hormones that'll bias your decision. And they know it. Right. And so this dance that's going on is always there. And our pretense of rationality is just that. It's a pretense. It's a negotiating strategy for modernity that actually turns out to be bad for us.
Right.
So they start out with this faith healing, and then they sell it a false promise, like, well, I'll do this for you, or this will be all fine, or whatever. They sell a false promise. And if they can't do that, they evade or silence you, which is shaming, moralizing, psychologizing, right? I love this, is like their first reaction isn't that's true or not, it's you're a bad person. Right? It's like the minute you see that, okay, it's a feminine brain, I can't talk to you, you're not an adult. Because you actually can't talk to them.
Right.
That's why I say you don't reason with your wife or your girlfriend. All you say is, I understand, I can do that, and I'm willing to do that, I can afford to do that, and I can do it. Right? Or I can't. It's never you're wrong.
No, that one never works.
Because they can't handle it. Because that will require self-auditing of where they're driven by their intuition. The next thing they do is evading or silencing, or I just said that. And then next is they undermine you. In other words, if they try to soothe you, if they can't, they make a false promise to you, which is they bribe you. If they can't, they evade you. If they can't get over that, they undermine you. And if they can't get that, they attack you, which deplatforming, conspiracy, whatever. And when they get caught, they hide behind plausible deniability that it was freedom of choice and they were doing the right thing. But it's just criminal, a different kind of criminal behavior.
I think it points back to the gypsies.
What?
It points back to the gypsies again.
The gypsies aren't annoying enough to get rid of, right? Women aren't annoying enough to smack around, right? I mean, it just aren't most of the time. And that's just how it is. Men, the problem with men is we stop smacking each other around, so society gets ruder and ruder by the day. When smacking around is an incredible way to get, that's why I love Russia. You do not talk shit in Russia.
No.
Talk shit, get hit, and not after bravado exchange. Talk shit, 1001 bang, and it's over. And they just roll you over, make sure you're not going to get run over by a car, put you on your side so you won't choke out, and they leave you there in the street, and it's all over. And why? Because that's my responsibility as brother and as brother Russian and father. It's not a problem, and they don't get mad for that reason. Like you see these people fight in Russia, you don't realize they're not mad. It's discipline. It's parenting.
Wow, I get it.
And so that's the other reason I like them. It's just because it's just, well, I have to do this, my responsibility, because that's wrong.
It's duty.
It's just duty. They just do it. It's why, and people wonder why I love them. And I'm like, because it's really easy to be a good person there. Right? And you don't have to put up with shit. You just don't. You put up with stupid shit like, the guy who's going to come sit with you at the table is really just trying to get you to buy him a vodka. Right? You know what? I buy them a fucking beer. I don't care. I don't want to drink with you all night. I got work to do, but I'll have a drink with you. Right? And there's that kind of stuff. And there's the phenomenon of girls asking you to go on a date so that you can buy them a meal because they can't afford to go to restaurants. Endemic, right? But they're poor. It's not because they're shitheads, right? They're actually trading you their company for a meal. And that's all there is, right? I just find it very interesting. And then you can still find in my generation Russian women who are aristocratic in Moscow, at least. You can talk to highly cultured people. I can't find a cultured person in America anymore anywhere. I mean, they used to exist in the 50s.
I got nothing to say, brother. You drink some.
It's like my wife and I were like, we're educated in the fine arts and the classics, right? I mean, we're like,
specialized.
We're the last generation.
Yeah.
And they've destroyed our culture. Like Yale stopped teaching art because it's white. Well, dude, every fucking invention is white. I'm sorry. You can find a few others, but they're going to be at the margins. I mean, what's his name? Charles Murray already did this, right? We knew it anyway, but Murray was the one who brought it up. And they'll go, well, you can find these exceptions. Yeah, you can find those exceptions. They're exceptions. No comparison.
Like that. Are they still using electricity there?
Yeah.
Just saying. There you go. It's like it's an appalling litany of destruction that we have witnessed in a short period. It's like going bankrupt, slowly at first.
So once you understand that men are warring against physical capital, right, and women are warring against social capital, and that we let women out and we brought elite in. We let women out who are biased, at least a third of which are biased to defect and buy all this stupid shit, because literally a third of women are crazy. We know this. Why is only a few people willing to say that? That if only a few women have sufficient agency to overcome their neuroticism?
I don't know.
Well, it's just, I don't know why it's even. Why is it that we don't admit that we treat women with kid gloves in every walk of life because of that, or that women aren't as valuable in the workplace because they're not loyal, and loyalty matters in the political structure of organizing men to produce a competitive advantage, or that there aren't any women that can compete with there aren't any women that can compete with the upper 1% of men. There aren't any. Well, of course, we're going to be distributed this way. And no, redistributing it down to women is just you asking for special pleading. The question is whether there's reciprocity, not whether there's privilege. Fucking makes me nuts. They can't. So when I say this, it's like we have to come to terms with the irrationality of women. Just like women have to come to terms with the lack of empathy of men. Right?
That's a reasonable assertion.
So how do we walk through that? Their method, they use delay, deceive, undermining, sowing discord, and they destroy the genetic, normative, cultural, institutional capital by use of disinformation, deceit, defamation, sedition, and treason. Then they do that by baiting into hazard by the false promise of freedom from constraints of the formal, physical, natural, evolutionary laws. Then they use their technique, which is sophistry, called pilpul, undermining, which is called critique, escaping which from liability and warranty, which is their special pleading, by pretense of plausibility that it was your choice and they didn't mean anything, despite the deliberate avoidance of their due diligence. In other words, they intentionally avoided use of reason to self-criticize and audit, and the deliberate evasion of warranty, deliberate escape from liability, given the asymmetry of knowledge and the dependence upon instincts. The presence of malincentives of both the agents and victims, and it's pursued for the purpose of attention, reward, profit, influence, power, undermining power, and the trust cooperation of a population in a normal distribution, thereby generating accelerating, in other words, recursive, accelerating cycles of internal conflict, generating demand for authority to control by these women and their advocates. In other words, they're undermining order in order to replace it with a different order.
Yeah. So
that order.
Yeah. This is the way the Soviet thing came into being.
I mean, it's just, we shouldn't be surprised that someone on this earth would specialize in the female method of warfare, or in the only civilization that produced markets between elites and were not a monopoly, which is ours, would be a home at which the people who could use the female method of warfare would be most let loose to conduct that warfare. Because normally we conduct it between the judiciary, the judiciary and the commercial sector, the military and the state, and the priesthood and the family. We conduct this conflict because it calculates, and it's been good for us. But other people don't do that. So we've created an opening for the evil of female to be naturally expressed because we were too enlightenment, Frenchified by because French is the females, right? They're the females in Europe. The French female strategy which was the Catholic Church's strategy, which was the underclass's strategy, who runs France, because they killed their middle class and their aristocracy. They brought the female way into as a false promise of freedom from the laws of nature. And this crap has taken root as a catastrophe across our civilization. And it went from Rousseau to Hegel to Marx to the neo-Marxists to the postmodernists to the PC woke. And the vehicle by which that was done was the people most able and professionalized and institutionalizing the female method of warfare, which is the Ashkenazi Jews. And we gave them an army, which was women liberated by us without regulating the female method of antisocial behavior and the female method of warfare. Right. So who do you blame? Do you blame
this is the Russian question.
Do you blame yourself for not defending against the women, or do you blame women for being women?
It's bots.
They're bots.
And then you didn't defend against the bots.
And guess who the only men on earth are who aren't bots? White Northern European males with IQs over 130.
So we failed. We were bad.
We failed. So when I talk to them, they're like, well, this and that. And the other thing is like, look at the man in the mirror. And they get pissed at me for it. The guy
who does?
The right.
How do they get mad for?
What?
How come they get mad?
They get mad at me because I told them the person who failed is the man in the mirror. If I told you show up with 2 billion guys and it's over in 3 days, it would happen. Well, what are they going to do? They're cowards. The problem is the man in the mirror. It's not the enemy. The enemy is just a dog that is more scent-oriented than, scent-oriented than sight-oriented, right? I mean, it's another turd-slinging ape, right? I mean, it doesn't know any better. Even if they know better, they think they're doing the right thing. Why? Because they're cognitively female. And what are they doing as cognitively female? They're just advancing their genetic interests.
That's right. So I see this as it's opportunism at play in a field which has not closed off the opportunities for such activities.
Right. And my point is, what did my work do? It says, here's how you close this off, put it in the Constitution, and equally suppress the female means of antisocial behavior and warfare, as we did in the past, which was one of the reasons we were so successful, and therefore limit women to productive reciprocal exchanges in the market for cooperation, whether it be consumptive, sexual, marital, consumptive, or commons. Right? I mean, just do that. Well, it's just not hard. The thing is, you can't create an asymmetry without, in other words, you can't create the most egalitarian and open society and without equally suppressing the means of warfare.
Right.
The thing is, we've spent so long domesticating male warfare and making men responsible for their wives and daughters, and everybody else, right? That we've taken the aristocracy out of the question. And they think paternalism is male command. It doesn't. It means we're the only people capable of policing. Because you're not capable. Because why? Because the men are the only 1%ers. We're all the 1%ers. It's fucking annoying. I mean, it's so simple. It's all these lies. It's just all these lies. And it's just so tiresome, to live in a world. People are angry, but they don't understand. You're angry for a good reason. The universe is uncomputable because everything the water you're swimming in as a fish is just a network of lies. The truth is a rare crumb that happens to flicker off a rock now and then, and that you can't even notice the difference.
Oh yeah. And that what's interested me, so that I studied for 5 years what happened to America before I started talking to you, and might have been 6, who knows. But it's like there's a certain, it's angry is not a really good word, but it's disturbed, a disturbed emotion driven by the overt lies, untruths, miscommunications, with the purpose of misleading you and the public in general, with great success. It's very irritating.
It makes me crazy. Of course, I have an OCD problem of pattern recognition that doesn't ever go away under any conditions. And so it just makes me angry.
I look at it like this. It's like a certain form of madness, but it's like not unreasonable madness. It's like, I have a very good reason to be disturbed by this. It's very irritating, especially when you witness the costs involved, and that there's huge expenses that have been incurred by this civilization. Because
what's the price of the destruction of European civilization since the Jewish movement of the Frankfurt School to America? You mean they did it on purpose with the intention of bringing a revolution? They're not revolutionary. What's his name? Who's your friend there?
Who's that? Gromsky?
No, Michael Jones.
Michael Jones.
They're not revolutionary. It's not revolution. They're not trying to bring about a good. They undermine to bring about a bad. And that's why they get persecuted everywhere they go. And like women, they don't reform because they can't look in the mirror, because looking in the mirror requires self-auditing.
It's like Enriquez talks about a filter that exists between the private conversations in the mind and that which is allowed into the public sphere. So we filter that out so I don't look like to be the raving madman that I might otherwise appear to be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, but it is this filtration appears to have been, it has been incapacitated by the failure of the social environment to censure the behavior, the antisocial behavior. So they're allowed to go around crashing about and causing all kind of harm because we haven't identified what they're doing as problematic.
Yeah, because for some reason, we appear to have evolved an insensitivity to the female method of conflict. Women are hypersensitive to all these signals, which is why they think we're stupid. And their valuation of those signals is why we think they're stupid. In other words, they attribute value to this, what we consider nonsense. Well, reproductively, it isn't nonsense for them. Because women are henpeckers, right? They predict, like they destroy each other. They don't give up. So once a woman decides you need to be out, the result is death. It's not know your place. I mean, I was listening to Sapolsky talk about male reconciliation behavior, which is in chimps, which is, you and I could get in a fist fight tomorrow. I would like you more after the fist fight.
Sure.
because that's how we do it, right?
It's just like in Russia. You wake up on the side of the road on your side, and you're like, "That wasn't so bad." I'm gonna buy him a vodka tomorrow.
It's actually kind of honesty, because if we can fight with each other and then reconcile, we can trust each other.
That's right, because you're all right. You didn't kill me. You could have left me in the street.
I know my place. I don't overstep my bounds with you again. It's okay.
Oh my.
And this happens, and the only thing that'll men or get really dangerous out is the primary reason we kill, which is over women, because that's that's the one thing we have to be extremely sensitive over.
That's right.
So
that's all right. So it is. It points to the Russians, though. I like the Russians. It's the Russian who to blame when you have been taken, right?
Yeah,
is to blame. And it's like this. It's like you were responsible for having trusted that which was not trustworthy is the right answer.
Yes.
Because now you're optimizing your agency.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I keep tabs on the price of apartments in Moscow, because I would love to get on a ticket and go back. Because I'm not if you're like an asshole, it's not a good place to be. But I'm like basically a nice guy. And so, and if I offend somebody, I in Russia, I like, oh, I'm so, you, and they get it, right?
Yeah,
right?
You didn't mean to do that.
Right, I didn't mean to do that. And I just tell them, I grew up in America. I'm kind of stupid, right? I just didn't understand. I'm sorry. Can I buy you dinner, right? Or okay, that's fine, right? It's okay. But you don't go up and start something.
Oh my!
With a Russian man, you just don't. Especially because Slavs are built the opposite of me. I'm built for lifting very heavy things, right? They're built for riding horses and punching long distances.
That's right. With a short fuse, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is they're not mad. You're just wrong. You know what I mean? That's the thing. There's this Germanic thing we have where we're mad because you're violating your duty, your moral duty, when we're doing something. So we get mad. Like the Italian thing is like funny because it's just all fucking bullshit, right? It's just bravado posturing and whatever. And there's all this peacock feather shit going on,
Right.
In Germans, like we take this shit Germanics, we take this shit seriously. But Russians, it's not really like that. It's just you're wrong. You need to be stopped. It's so pragmatic. I don't know how to get it. I say that there's something about the Slavic mind that is less angry. I don't know quite what it is. I wish I could put.
It has to do with the same thing that the women have to express their emotionality, okay, or they go crazy.
Yeah, I guess.
Right. So it's like this. It's like it's not that I'm mad at you. You need some discipline, like now. Yes. Like this is otherwise you're going to get in some big trouble, brother.
And it's like Russian cops. I'm like, if you have to talk to them, you look them in the eye, you smile and say, "Yes, sir. What can I give you?" And you just you just be honest. Okay, fine. They're suspicious because they have rights to be suspicious because people try to get away with shit there. But that's the kind of shit they do. They try to get away with shit, right? But there's none of this crap we get here where the police won't kick your ass if you're out of line. I mean, if the police say you go over there and you don't, you're going to get hurt. And it's just duty, right? They're not mad. Like our cops get mad. Their cops don't get mad. It's just you're a pain in my ass. Don't make work for me. Actually, that's actually the mechanism. Don't make work for me. Right? You're making work for me. It's all the discipline thing is probably in the same sphere. Is don't make work for me. You're making work for me. You're making me have to police the commons.
Oh my.
I know. I fucking love. And it doesn't hurt that I talk to somebody over there every couple of days and
right.
All right. So we went over 10,000 foot view. And so all I really want to break it up is into, I mean, I could go through all, I have so much material here. So the strategy is, now realize, have you ever been into a group of women and they always stick together against the men no matter what, right? Always. They're not afraid of even coming out against their husband because their husband's not going to ditch them, right? So that, because loyalty binds that, but they'll always stick together. So what do you get? Where do you think preservation of separatism comes from?
Preservation of separatism. I don't know exactly what you're referring to.
So the diasporic people preserve their culture of separatism.
Yes.
They demonstrate intolerance and non-integration. In other words, no matter what you do, they won't integrate. Women are the same. They'll stay favoring the women. They'll evade all payments for costs to the commons. They'll try to free ride on the cost of the commons. The commons are males' responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
They evade production or productivity and their contribution to the world. In other words, they avoid the things that are physically costly. In other words, just as our women push men out of the easy jobs into the hard jobs, and then they want to worry about equal pay. The Ashkenazi practice this same strategy as a diasporic people, which is the female method of avoiding work that puts them at risk and maximizing their potential to free ride. They prefer parasitism, profiting from baiting into hazard, usually alcohol, prostitution, slave trading, gambling, or organized crime. Did I get I didn't get, yeah, usury is in there. It's just fine. Our financial system is just usury at an abstract scale. They do this by profiting from baiting into hazard, which is specializing in those industries. And they specialize in the use of the state against the people. To say women specialize in the use of men against men.
Yeah.
They invest their assets from these criminal activities into additional rent seeking. In other words, how women divorce you and take advantage of your child support and alimony. They undermine moral and ethical markets and trades, slowly migrating capital into mixed criminal, black market, gray market, and open market industries. We see this as their allocation of capital to undermining the legal system, the academic system, and the political system, and our mythological system in the entertainment business, and undermining our information system in the media. They produce disinformation by undermining our information by producing alternate histories or propaganda, which is what women do. They tell stories, fictionalisms. And they undermine the state, their knowledge, their traditions, their culture, and institutions, norms in order to convert the state from a suppression of locals at rents to the maximization of rents that they can extract, which is what women do from men. So when I say it's just instinct, they don't have to have a plan.
That's right.
They don't need one. They're just doing what comes naturally, which is the female method of undermining. They've just weaponized it because we haven't prohibited them from weaponizing.
So I'm going to have this conversation with Dr. Enriquez here in a couple of days, which is this: I'm going to ask him to try to cause him to understand that. Would he recognize that we're in some psychological war that he has yet to recognize, if the other half is already aware of it and recognizes the transgressions for what they are and wants to criminalize them? Does that make sense? Because it's like, at some point, it's like, you can just think you're just being, but you're being a rattlesnake in my yard, man. And that's
the way to do it is have him list everything we depend on for cultural continuity, cultural, economic, genetic, cultural, political, and economic continuity. what you'll find is a list of commons.
Okay.
And if he doesn't, suggest them,
Okay.
right? Say, list those things. Which of those things are being warred against? And what he'll say is that, and then ask him what the laws of nature are, the four laws of nature, four sets of laws of nature, and just tell them what they are. They're the four sciences, right? Doesn't matter. Which is they're the physical law, which is before, the behavioral law, which is the during, and the evolutionary law, which is the after, and the logics, which is how we describe those relationships. So those are where you take him, is like, what is being warred against here? And what he'll do is he'll try to make the case that the law, at very least, the four laws of the universe, the physical laws, the behavioral laws, and the evolutionary laws are being falsely promised that they can be violated, and that they're doing it by use of deceit, which violates the first law, which is logic. And so if those are all violations, how can, what is your judge of outcome? Is it okay if we just burn the planet down? What's your decision? So you have to get people to stop thinking in a frame that's been constructed to box them into a frame, right? That's what's happening. That's what Freud did. That's what Bose did. That's what Marx did. They tried to create a frame which demonized the distribution of mankind as an intentional construct, that because we weren't subject to the laws of nature, instead of trying to keep mankind within the bounds of nature for the maximum benefit of all. And that by and large, only Europeans succeeded. And even then we had a dark age because there was a war against that system of thought. So, I mean, they said, at worst, they said what they were going to do, and they did it. And they've been kicked out of 100 countries already for doing it. It's not like they don't know that. They don't know it, but they won't revise their history. They act like Judaism was invented in 1600. They're ignoring everything that happened before that. And they're doing that because, of course, they couldn't face it the same way women can't self-correct, because it requires self-auditing. So again, when I try to get this across, I'm like, it's just that we're all bots. It's just we happen to European males of a certain caliber, because we're sufficiently dimorphic, sufficiently autistic, sufficiently disagreeable, and sufficiently intelligent that there's enough of us to form an aristocracy that can, quote, be paternal, which means preventing all this criminality from happening. It doesn't mean we know what to do. That's what they're claiming. They're claiming we know what to do.
Wait, who?
The feminists are claiming paternalism is a claim that we know what to do versus we know what not to do. And only some people are capable of preventing what we should not do. The problem is women think they're right. Until they have 5 kids. They have 5 kids, they get it, because now they're as rational as men, because they have the same cognitive load as men, because we have to think about the tribe, and all of a sudden they're stuck changing from being a woman to being a tribe manager, and all of a sudden men and women are equal. So, it's like, how do we get women to not have to have 5 kids before they reach cognitive sentience, right? They reach real sentience. I mean, it's not easy. And then you got a third of them who are intense, who are manifestly crazy. And we forget the fact that there were more women in sanitariums than there were men in prisons, and for good fucking reason. And so, the thing is, we've just made it wealthy enough that we can tolerate more crazy women in the workforce. The problem is we let a third of them vote. We let the crazy women vote, and we let the mean girls tell them how to vote. Once you understand it, is it difficult? It's not even complicated. It's just the network of lies. So what do we got to do? Get rid of the lies.
All right. Have you got a plan for that?
I do. It's called a constitution with a bunch of changes to the foundation of our law.
Perfect.
the suppression, so reciprocity is largely material in our court system, in our legal system. But reciprocity among women was adjudicated by the church, right? And women and men and their husbands, fathers. And we let the freaking Pandora out of the box, and all of a sudden, and then brought in an elite that was happy to make use of them. So we have a bunch of women are fucking crazy. I mean, just deal with it.
My.
I said that I just tried to sneak that in there, see what you would do.
I know it's like this. I got this difficult situation I find myself in, this scissor point, which is that being seen to have heard you say such a thing and not strongly objecting might cause me to be vilified myself in some penumbra.
I put on one of our videos. I should do it more often. That you got to understand that he doesn't agree with me.
Wait, I haven't committed. It doesn't mean I disagree with you either. It's like I'm not trying to cop either way on that one. I'm just like this.
Right, but it's crazy beautiful. It's like, why do men like crazy chicks? They're wonderful.
They're crazy.
They're crazy, but they're wonderful. They're magic. And if a guy gets a hot crazy chick, he'll take that hands down, right? Because it's like having your house full of flowers, right? I mean, it's just amazing. Crazy chicks are awesome until they're not.
Then they're just the opposite.
They're just the opposite, but it's not a bad thing. So, if women weren't what they were, they wouldn't be wonderful, right? But they are wonderful. And they burn a lot of self to give all that love and care out. Totally, it's great. It just doesn't scale. That's it. Empathy is a cognitive limit. I mean, it's like a yardstick. It measures within the yardstick, right? That's it. It doesn't scale to politics because you're now it's like I can measure the distance with my feet until it's something I can't walk, right? I mean, mathematics is scale independent. Reciprocity, as we understand it, is scale independent. Empathy isn't. Reciprocity is scale independent. Empathy isn't. Because reciprocity doesn't require knowledge. Empathy does.
It is an interesting function of it. Like I worked with heavy machines before, and it's like this is your scale of your experience as a human being is limited. And it's like when you're dealing with superhuman forces, that's this hydraulics and you just crazy forces that are like outside the scope of anything you can possibly understand from an experiential point of view, or dealing with the microscopic, which is too small to begin to understand the forces at work without advanced instrumentation. And it's like this empathy function it's good inside its frame.
It's excellent inside. I mean, it's awesome.
It's necessary.
Absolutely. So the problem is that, it's like, when my wife decides the children need to be managed some way, I'm like, yeah, well, fuck, I'm not competent to make that decision. If he gets out of hand, I'm competent to make that decision, right? You're kind of a woman, you kind of get distracted easily. So I got to keep my radar on for when the children are going to get killed. And you see how fast men move when they're trying to protect their children. It's like, if you watch gorillas, the same fucking thing. A gorilla will protect a child at light speed. Some men are the same. Women don't. They they freeze all the time. They got to think about it and feel it. You got to feel it before they can think it. And we don't. We just go. And so that there's ranges of competency. Just stop being arrogant that your competency, that you're competent outside your range of competency. I mean, that's an arrogance.
I agree it, but I agree it to be a cultivated arrogance, which is to say they're social processes at work with the intent of driving that arrogance.
In other words, they're trying to organize people by creating arrogance, overconfidence, and an incompetence, right? And this is really mean, this is the false promise, right? I mean, you put a look at it many ways, but yeah, you create allies by a false promise of competence beyond your competence. It's like, I'm going to talk about the right again. These fucking shit for brains who think they're going to have a revolution. Dude, you're so incompetent, your own people are more afraid of you than the enemy.
Not me.
I wasn't talking about you.
Well, I know.
You just see these guys, and they're freaking retards. Excuse my colloquial French.
It's all right. It is what you say it is. I'm not trying to bear witness to what you have witnessed.
Okay, so let's just clarify. I say a lot of offensive things because I know Brad doesn't like it, and it makes me laugh. It's you know how you get back at your parents with these little things? Well, Brad is parenting me, and he's making me a little agitated for parenting me, and so I like to get back at him with these little things. So this is my way of compensating. It's not like he agrees with me. I'm not really sure I agree with me. I just like getting the reaction.
That's right. It's okay, right? It's a tangential amusement, nothing more.
It's a way inserting levity in what is a really difficult conversation.
Oh, it's not so difficult. I'm good with that.
So I can close up with the overriding strategy is racism and identitarianism, separatism, supremacy, nepotism, polylogicalism, fictionalism, parasitism, hazarding, undermining, sedition, insurrection, rebellion, revolution, destruction, degeneracy, and globalism. All of these things are natural expressions of the female warfare against men who are proxies for the limits imposed by nature. And we just have to do what I've said here. It's just fix a few holes in the law, and it's over, because we just can criminalize their method of sedition.
Wonderful.
And the bad ones will leave, and the good ones will stay, and the problem will be gone. And our universities will be clear, and the postmodernists will be out of work, and just that's it. And the government would be cleaned up. I mean, you imagine how much fun we'd have suing politicians? I mean, you know how hard it would be to open your mouth as a politician? And you can't say anything. We don't need politicians anymore, but I mean, we just don't. There's no need for them. When we have a technical capacity of direct democracy, whether it be proportional, disproportionate, whatever, economic, doesn't make any difference. There's no need for politicians, because all it does is create a jury small enough to bribe.
That's very good.
All right, so did we get through?
I think we made it through. That was a good little talk. And so what I'll do is I'll send you a link to the video with the annotations.
Thank you, boss. Appreciate today.
It's always a pleasure, and I'll look forward to chatting with you here in the near future.
Take care.
Adios.